Hey everyone, welcome back to NDC. Today we're diving into Apple's official SwiftUI tutorials from the Develop in Swift series. This is the perfect starting point for SwiftUI beginners. These tutorials are packed with real-world examples to help you master the basics, and I'll show you how to follow along with these while working in Xcode. In this video, we're going to explore two beginner-friendly lessons, Hello SwiftUI and customizing views with properties. I'll guide you step by step, explain the why behind the code, and share tips for getting the most out of Apple's tools. Are you ready? Let's go ahead and dive on in. So to get started, you can head on over to the developer.apple.com/tutorials/develop in Swift. I'm also going to put the link in the description below if you want to just go ahead and click on that. And once you've got this website loaded up, you can go ahead and press the Get Started button. This is going to be a brief overview of some additional links. So if you don't have Xcode downloaded, you can click on it here or download Xcode for free in the App Store. But there's some great links that you can explore here, as well as if you're an educator, you can download the educator guide and you can kind of learn about all the topics that will be covered in these tutorials. So after you have Xcode installed, a few words of advice. The only way to learn to develop apps is to make them, practice, make mistakes, like Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus says, right? You'll build these skills more quickly if you type in the code instead of copying and pasting them, right? It's one of those things we can, look up certain functions online and copy and paste them, but learning why and how they work is very important. Experiment, bring your own ideas, and have fun. So we can go get started with the Hello SwiftUI project, and this is going to be our first kind of dipping our toe in the water with SwiftUI. So the first thing it wants us to do is open up Xcode and create a new project. If this is your first time opening up Xcode, you might not have all these projects on the right side, but you should see this screen where you can create a new project. If this screen isn't popping up, you can also go to the very top of your Mac, next to that little Xcode button, File, New, Project. Alrighty, it wants us to create a new app from the template. So we do have some options up here at the top. We're going to be making an iOS app and we're going to be selecting the app template. This is the most basic template that we can use. So we're going to go ahead and make sure iOS app is selected and hit next. Here under the product name, this is where we can name our application. So it wants us to call it Chat Prototype, or whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it My First App or Hello SwiftUI, totally up to you. Under the team, you can enter your name. So it suggests, if your name's Sophie Sun, then put name.sophiesun. The organization identifier is used when you upload an app to the App Store. So I just have mine set as my personal name as an individual developer. So we'll also make sure that our interface is on SwiftUI, not on Storyboard, and our language is on Swift. We don't need any testing systems or storage. We can press next to go to the final dialog, and it's going to ask us where to save. And make sure you've unselected the Create to Git repository for my Mac. If you want to learn more about source control, there is a link here that you can access. I'm just going to save mine under my Swift and Xcode examples on my desktop. Alrighty, next it's having us explore our project. So on the left side of the screen here, as you can see in the highlighted image, I'll scroll it up so I'm not blocking it. As you can see in the highlighted image, we kind of have a project navigator, and this is going to display all the files in our project. Currently, our content view is highlighted because that's what we are currently selected on. If we were to go to our assets, it would change. So our content view in our app template, this is our first screen of our application. Next, we have our editor. So we can see here where our text is. This is where we can make changes to our application. This is where we type out all of our code. And we also have our simulator, which is just booting up currently, which is going to show what our app would look like on a real device. So here's our simulator. So we have a few different options here. If you click on this kind of phone button, it'll allow you to change the different devices. We can even select different, iPhones, iPads, so we can make sure that our app looks great on everybody's device. We can select on these kind of toggles here to turn light mode, dark mode on, right? We could even check different orientations, different dynamic text sizes that users might be using. We can even zoom in or zoom out. So if you really want to inspect an element, I like to use this third option here, which kind of puts the phone and fits it into our view. If you don't want to see the canvas and you need a little bit more editing space, you can press the adjust editor options here and actually disable the canvas, which will hide that preview. I'm going to leave it on because we can actually use the preview to see our changes that we're making in real time. So the tutorial just kind of goes over these steps in case you need any extra help. So next, let's go ahead and explore our code. So names of a lot of these elements are very common English words. So if we look at things like image, image scale, text, right? These are all pretty self-explanatory. Image, we're going to be seeing, some sort of PNG or, JPEG on the screen. The scale, how big it might be, and text, well, it's going to be, words that are going to be displayed to the user. Something to note about image scale is that it's camel case. So if you have words that are kind of glued together, the first word starts off with a lowercase, and the other words kind of in that sentence are going to be capital letters. So it allows us to kind of read this word seamlessly. Another thing to note is there are braces as well as parentheses or brackets. So these braces, so next to the O and P key on your keyboard, if you hold Shift, you have an opening brace and a closing brace, and these allow us to group multiple lines of code. They're kind of like containers. They kind of group everything into one chunk. You can even double click. So if we double click on these parentheses, we can see all the code that's contained within this V stack here. We can even double click on the parentheses, brackets. So these actually hold arguments, right? So what is going to be that image? What is going to be this text? Another thing to note is that Xcode automatically indents your code. While not necessary for it to be able to run, it just improves the kind of visual and readability of your code. You can also see that there's different parts of our code are color coded. This is actually called syntax highlighting. So you can see like some words like import, struct, var, they're all different colors compared to like image. You can see the text here is orange. If you want to change your syntax highlighting, you can click on Editor, go to Theme or Syntax Coloring. Actually, if you're familiar with Java and JavaScript, you can kind of have it be those more common colors. You can even change your theme, and you can even edit the themes here. I've even added a custom font to mine. You can change the spacing, right? You can make Xcode's editor look however you like and make it as customizable as possible. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Hello World code. This is kind of colored in that orangey red color, and this actually represents a string. So strings are what hold text data. Another thing I'd like to point out is the VStack. This basically stacks views vertically. It's perfect for aligning multiple elements in a single column. We also have padding down here. What padding does is it kind of creates space around different elements or even text to give more kind of room for each of your elements. And our foreground style, that's going to change the color of certain elements. So this one's currently tint. We can actually change this to be a different color if we really wanted to. So if we were to change this to be blue or red, you'll notice that it updates the globe on the screen. So we can use that foreground color or style to change what it looks like. All right, the next thing the tutorial suggests we do is edit code and make mistakes. That's one way to really learn and reinforce what's kind of happening. So what we can do is we can change the text inside these quotation marks. So instead of hello world, it wants us to change it to knock, knock with an exclamation point. And we can see that also updates on the screen here. So now it wants us to make a deliberate mistake. It wants us to delete all of the information, including the quotation marks, within the text. All right, and we get an error. If you want to expand your errors, you should be able to kind of click on the line here and give you a reason as to why it's happening. And essentially it's saying missing argument for parameter. So when we have text, we need to provide it some information within those parameters. So let's start off by trying to fix it by adding a single quotation mark. We We get another error because now it's trying to encapsulate everything. When we have text, we need to make sure that we have a opening quotation and a closing quotation, and then our words go in between. Something cool that generally will happen is if we add a quotation mark and start typing, you'll notice that we get an additional quotation mark that automatically closes it off for us, saving us a bunch of time. Same thing if we add a brace and we hit return, it'll create an opening brace and a closing brace. I'm just going to go ahead and delete those so we don't make any additional mistakes in our code. All right, and let's go ahead and change this back to say knock knock. Something we can also do is use the library to add a text view. So in SwiftUI, this is something that's built in. So at the top of our Xcode here, there should be a plus button that says show library. We can click on it. We can either scroll through all these different items if you want to add a list. And there's actually a lot of helpful information here from the documentation. So we can either scroll until we find text, or we can press on the box up here and press text. Make sure that you are on the view section. So there's a whole bunch of different kind of snippets and different things in the library. If you're on the leftmost one, it kind of looks like a square with a circle in it. You can search for text. You can actually drag and drop this down, and we have a placeholder. We can press on the placeholder and notice how it gets highlighted blue, and we can hit the quotation marks. And let's add who's there. Cool, let's learn how we could use code completion in order to add modifiers. All right, so let's click on the end of line 16 here. So I'm just going to click outside of this bracket, and I'm going to hit return to create a new line of text. We can then press the dot or period on your keyboard in order to bring up the different modifiers. You'll see that these are represented with M. There's a whole bunch of different modifiers that we can add. Per the tutorial, let's go ahead and add some padding. So let's start to type it out. Pad. And from here, we can use the arrow keys to select the one we want. So we want this one here, edges and length. You can also click to select which one you want, but you'll need to hit return to commit those changes. So padding is going to add some space between elements. So you notice now there's some space between knock knock and who's there. Let's go ahead and also add a background. So after the padding, I'm going to do dot background. And what we want to do is we want to have one with a style and a shape. So we're going to look for the one with this underscore style in. So this is the fourth M on my end. We can hit enter, and we have kind of these placeholders like we did with the text. So let's go ahead and change the style. And we're going to have this be color with a capital C, dot, and this is where we can choose the property of color. Let's begin to type out yellow. We can hit return to fill in the blanks there. And we can click on our shape now, and we're going to make this a rounded rectangle here. I'll scroll this up on the right so you can see. So we're going to make it a rounded rectangle. Cool. And we can add a corner radius to this as well. So I'm going to add a bracket, corner radius, and it's going to ask us for a CG. It's going to ask us for a CG float. We can add a number here. The tutorial wants us to have 8, but we can actually change this number, make it something higher. We can see how the radius actually updates. We can even change the color if you wanted to make this red, right? We can see those changes in real time, experiment it, make your UIs your own, and have fun with it. So before we move on, let's go ahead and see how the order of these properties also affects how they're being displayed. So if we take this padding and we Command X, to cut it, and we are to add it after the background, you'll notice that it kind of looks a little bit strange because we didn't add that extra room around the text. The background is hugging the text a lot more closely. Let's go ahead and figure out why that is. So we can use a pretty cool tool here. Currently with our preview, we're in live preview. So this little bar under our preview, it says live. If we were to go to the middle option, kind of looks like a mouse inside of a square, we can go on selectable. And this allows us to select different objects. So if I click on our knock knock, you can see a highlight on the left side where it is in the code, which is really useful, but it'll also kind of show us that there's this large space around it. If we were to remove this padding, we can kind of see that without the padding, it's really small and the background is just kind of clinging on to that element. Now, if we were to add our padding back before the background, you'll see that this blue box kind of expands. With the padding, we're adding that space. And then now that we have that extra space, our background is filling that void in. So the sequence in which we have our modifiers is really important in our code. So we have an example here. The kind of text hello adds the background color, and then the padding adds that space after. Not great. We're on the right side. I apologize, it's probably getting a little bit cut off on my end. We have the text, then we have the padding where we have this extra space, and then the background color fills it in. So make sure that the order that you're adding these modifiers is correct. You might have to play around with it. Just like with text editing tools, Command X, Command C, V, and Z allow you to kind of manipulate different code with copy, paste, cut, right? Alrighty, so let's go ahead and add the style to our other text field here. We can also swap it back to live view to make it a little bit easier. We can actually even just copy and paste the code. So I'm going to copy and paste the padding and background color to save some time. And then I'll just change the color from yellow to be teal. And now we have two buttons, knock, knock, and who is there. All right, and that's it for the very first Hello SwiftUI tutorial. We do have some questions here. What type of data in Swift represents written language? Well, that would be string. So although text is used to display, we need to use a string data type in order to hold all those words and letters. So which modifier order expands the background of a view? Well, we just learned that we need to have our padding first, which is going to create extra space, and then add the background because order is important. True or false? You provide arguments between braces to provide related data. That would be false. We use parentheses, right? The braces are going to hold and kind of organize that code, whereas the parentheses are those arguments. So in this case, the text, the string value, who's there, those are found within those parentheses, those arguments. Alrighty. Great, we answered all the questions for the tutorial. We can read the article if we'd like, which covers all the kind of topics. There's even some suggestions. You can extend your app. You can kind of play around with adding shadows using the .shadow modifier. You can even challenge yourself. But we're going to hop into now the customize views with properties. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Alrighty, so it actually wants us to create a new project. So you can either exit out of Xcode. I'm going to go to the top here, File, New Project. Going to make sure we're on iOS app. And let's go ahead and call it Weather Forecast, as the website suggests. Make sure we're on SwiftUI language is Swift. Go ahead and create a project. Alright, so we can see a prototype of what we're going to be creating. So it looks like we have a simple interface to display two weather forecasts. And just as a note, there is a repeated pattern between the Monday and Tuesday. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is actually deleting the kind of sample code that it's created here. So we have the image and text. Let's go ahead and highlight and press delete on our keyboard to get rid of those. And it wants us to add Monday, a high temperature and a low temperature. So you can either use the object library. You can also just start to type out text, add our quotations here, Monday, right? Totally up to you, whatever feels best. So if you want to use the object library, it's a good idea because it kind of provides you with those placeholders as well. I'm a little bit old-fashioned, so I don't always use the placeholders. I like to kind of type it out, but whatever works best, especially if you're just exploring new elements. It might be a good idea to use the editor just so you don't make any mistakes. All right, so we can see on our simulator, we have Monday high 70 and low of 50. And of course, whatever you put in within these arguments. So if you wanted to have this be like Wednesday or something, feel free to do so. Let's go ahead and add an image using the SF symbols. of the sun. So these are reusable symbols that you've probably seen throughout any other iPhone apps that are very recognizable. So I'm going to create some space under our text for Monday, and I'm going to go to the object library up here again, but I'm going to click on this rightmost option. That's going to be the kind of symbols library. So if you click on that, you'll notice that we now have a whole bunch of different symbols. And you may have seen these before, maybe with like the pencil and circle if you use the Apple pencils and things like that. And we can also search for what we're looking for. So we want to add a picture of a sun. So we're going to go here and let's select the sun.max.fill and let's drag and drop it into our project. And that's going to add that SF symbol as an image, which is really useful. Just as a note, you can also use the SF Symbols app, and you can click on this hyperlink to find where that is. All right, next let's give it some color by using the foreground style. So under the image, let's go ahead and do the foreground style, and we can give it a color. So we're going to do color.yellow, color with a capital C. Alrighty, I'm just going to zoom in so it's a little bit easier to see our work. Great, we have Monday, a yellow sun, high of 70, low of 50. Looks just like that preview. So let's go ahead and get ready to add a second forecast by right-clicking on the VStack. So you can right-click on it. So if you don't know how to right-click with your trackpad or mouse, you can also control and click. And then we're going to select Embed in HStack. So that's going to add an HStack above it, and we can double click on the parentheses here and see that it's kind of all being encapsulated. But you'll notice currently nothing's actually changed because we haven't added any additional code yet. So because there's only one element, nothing has changed, but we'll show you how it looks in a second here. So let's copy the entire VStack next, including this padding, and highlight all of that. If you want to, find where it is, you can always use the double click on the brace there. We're going to Command C. Then underneath this padding, we're going to Command V to paste it. And now you'll see because we're embedded in an HStack, which stands for horizontal, we now have two instances, one on the left and one on the right. Well, I guess my camera's mirrored, but you get what I'm saying. Let's go ahead and edit these next. So we'll make one that's Tuesday instead of Monday. And you can see the first one is on the left with Monday, and the second one is on the right with Tuesday. All right, let's also delete this image here. We'll go back to our library, and we'll get a cloud with rain fill. So cloud, rain fill, let's go ahead and drag and drop it, and let's change this color to blue. Wonderful, that looks really cool. So just like with our preview, we have our Monday and Tuesday. Oh, we can also change the numbers. It's gonna be a little bit cooler for the raining apparently. All right, next let's create a custom sub view. So instead of copying and pasting this code over and over again, let's learn how we can encapsulate a day forecast in its own structure to make a customizable forecast card. So let's go ahead and right click on the VStack within the first day's forecast. So that Monday one, again, control click if you don't know how to right click on your Mac. And we're gonna go to the extract subview. So it's kind of like this second option within the second box here for me. We can press on it. And you'll notice that our code gets replaced with extracted view, and it's kind of disappeared, but we can scroll down a little bit and we'll find the extracted view. So the extracted view isn't really a great name, but don't worry, we can rename this. So what you can do to rename multiple things at the same time is to right click on it, refactor and rename. And anywhere where this is found within your project, you'll be able to rename it. So you'll notice as we change this to be day forecast, it's going to update it in both spots. We'll hit rename, and now that structure and where we call upon it has been changed. All right, and let's go ahead and change this VStack as well to be another day forecast. So I'm going to highlight this and then type day forecast, and we can We can also use our autofill feature to update that. So let's take a look at our code. There are 3 places where we can reference day forecast. Inside the H stack, we're creating 2 instances of day forecast to display on the screen. And at the bottom here is where we're defining the view and its contents. So just as a note, you define or declare a structure using the struct keyword. This right here. And we can use or create an instance of the structure by typing its name following the parentheses when we added that second one there. But there's a problem here. Both of these say Monday, we lost our cloud, right? So let's go ahead and add properties to display any forecast data using our custom view. So we can start by making the day of the week customizable. So we're gonna add a property to the day forecast view to store data about the day of the week. So we're gonna add a line in between where it says structure here and where it has the variable body subview. We're gonna say let day, we're gonna add a colon space string. Just as a note as well, you can add as many blank spaces as you want if that's customizable for you. Typically after I add a brace, I'll say add a brace and add some space. If it's too many spaces, it might be hard to read, but these blank lines do not impact your code in any way. So we do have an error up here, missing argument. We're gonna fix it in a moment, so don't worry. Before we fix the error, let's take a look at the property we've just created. So to declare a property, we can use the let keyword. A property has a name followed by a colon and then the kind of data that it holds. So this property displays the day and it holds a string value. So just as a note, in Swift, there's different types. So perhaps we can use an integer to represent a number, our string to represent text and things like that. And in Swift, we can read the code that we've added to the structure like this. Day property whose type is string, or you can say day is property of type string. And I find this little visual helps explain that pretty well. All right, so we can look at the error, and it's even going to provide us with a fix here if we really want. But essentially what we need to do is we need to add the day and then pass along that string information. So in this case, we would say Monday, we'd wrap that within a string. And then for the second one, let's do the exact same thing. Let's change that to be Tuesday. All right, although it has yet to update, we're going to now use the day property in the text view of our day forecast, so it'll reflect the changes that we've made. So down here in our view where it has text Monday, let's go ahead and highlight this and just change it to be day. So we're going to reference this information right here, and now you'll see on our preview Monday and Tuesday has been added. So again, I find this visuals really helpful here. So just in case you're not following along with the website open on your end, I find this visual really helps explain what we're kind of doing. So here we're passing along the string Monday, which relates to the day, and then we're updating the text here to whatever this information is. So in this case, it's Monday, right? Tuesday, saying, okay, this is the day. Now we're displaying the day, which is Tuesday, right? It's passing that information along. Now we're going to use int to display temperatures. Ints represent whole numbers, so anything that's not represented by a decimal. And we're going to use something called string interpolation to display the temperatures in a text view. So under our let day here in our structure of day forecast, we're going to create a high, and we're going to say int, so capital INT. Then we're going to say let low colon INT. So we're going to get those errors again because we are missing the arguments. And what we can do is when we have multiple information that we need to input within the brackets for those arguments, we can use a comma. So let's add comma high, and then let's add the number of 70, comma low, and let's add 40. Let's do the exact same thing here. So comma high, let's do 50, comma low, And let's have this be, I don't know, 6, or have this be 35. All right, and within our text in the day forecast, let's go ahead and add the high and the low here. So high, and we'll do low. But we're gonna get an error here. No exact matches in call to initializer, because there's no way to initialize a text view with a numeric value. We need to find a way to convert a number into a string to pass it into the text initializer, right? Text represents strings, but a number is different from a string. So we can use text interpolation to do just that. So let's go ahead and delete our high. Go ahead and add our quotation marks. What we can do is within these quotation marks, /, so the one right above return for me, we'll add brackets, and within these brackets, we're going to put high. So we have bracket, quotation mark, / bracket, high, close, quotation mark, closing bracket. Let's do the exact same thing here. / bracket, low, and it's even easier if you kind of just type and then end it like that. It's pretty smart at kind of filling in the blanks with the brackets. Now we can see in our preview that our numbers that we've passed along through the day forecast are displaying. So we can use string interpolation to kind of add those numeric values and display them as a string to the user. So we can also use computed properties for the icon in color. We can add another property that uses a Boolean value, which is either something that's true or false, in order to compute what appears in the image view. So we can show a rain cloud if the value is true and a sun if it is false. So let's create another let here, and we'll say let is, we're going to use camel case. So is rainy. Let's go ahead and add a colon, and we'll use the bool keyword. All right, and we'll address our errors here. So I'm going to add a comma, is rainy, and for a bool, we'll either say true or false. So for Monday, it's sunny, so we're going to go ahead and say false. And we'll add this as well here, is rainy, and we'll set this to be true. All right, and because is rainy property is bool, we need to write code for what to do when the value is true and when it's false. So we need to create a computed property that represents the icon's name. So under our other let statements here, we're going to create a variable, and we'll call it icon name. So variables are something that can kind of change and are a little bit more mutatable. We'll say that this is a string, and then we're going to add a brace, and if we hit return, it'll also create that closing brace. So we have an error here. It says missing return an accessor expected to return string. So code that computes a value must provide a value using the return keyword. Accessor is just another word for a computed property, by the way. So within our code here, we're going to say return, right? You notice that turns purple. And let's do cloud.rain.fill. So that's the one that we had referenced earlier. So now let's go to our image here, and within the image, under system name, we're going to do icon name. We're going to reference this variable that we had just created. So now we have two yellow rain clouds. So we're going to need to use the value of is rainy in order to return different values. So something when it's true and something when it's false. So how we can do that is by using an if statement. So we're going to go into our variable icon name. We're going to create a little bit of space, and we're going to say if is rainy, then we're going to add a brace. Okay, let's go ahead and close this off. So we're kind of encapsulating it, and then we can use the else keyword. We'll add a brace here. We'll hit return. Then we'll say return sun.max.fill. Cool, so now we can see, so if is rainy is true, it's going to return the raining cloud. Otherwise, it's going to return the sun max fill. So we can see here, is rainy is false. So that else statement provides the sun, is rainy is true, that provides the rain cloud. So the next problem is it's still all yellow, it's all the same color. So let's go ahead and create another variable here. Say variable icon color, I'm using camel case again, colon, and then we're going to set this to be a color value. Rather than a string or an integer, we're using color. Let's add our brace. Let's say if is rainy, colon, return color dot blue. Go to the end of this brace here, else, add a brace, add some space, return color dot yellow. All right, and in the foreground style where we have color dot yellow, let's go ahead and replace this with our icon color instead. And now we can see that the blue has been updated to represent the condition that we have set for it. All right, the next step it wants us to do is to style the custom view. So we can adjust the style, font, padding, and we can see it change in every single card. So we've done all this work. So now for any future cards, we'll have this consistent style. So under the text here, let's go ahead and add a font. And from here, we can add capital F font, dot, and then let's do a headline. You can see that that has changed. And maybe for the low, we'll do dot font, font dot large title. And we can see how that's all different. Ooh, that's probably a little bit cursed. All right, let's make this one a headline as well. And then under our day, let's do font dot large title. That might look a little bit better. Yeah, I think that looks a lot cooler. So SF symbols actually also automatically work with dynamic type as well to change the size of the image. So under our image here, we already have our foreground style. So let's add a font here and do font dot large title as well, which is pretty cool for these SF images. If you're using a custom image, you'll have to resize it a little bit differently though. And let's go ahead and follow the tutorial and we'll do the foreground style color dot secondary. So we'll do dot foreground style color dot secondary. So you can use this for less important information. Finally, we're going to add a little bit of padding to the icon. So here we'll do dot padding, and within the number we can actually change the amount of padding. So if we just change this to 5, you can see how it kind of shrinks. Changes to 10, right? So there's kind of like a default padding, but you can also assign a number value. So you can change this number until you're satisfied. If we do 100, that looks really cursed, but you can kind of play around with those numbers until you find something that looks great to you in your project. Alrighty, let's go ahead and check our understanding. What code creates an instance of the following view? So we have structure, person, avatar, let name, string, image, color, and then we have some code. All right, well, it's certainly not the person avatar because we kind of have 3 conditions or arguments that we need to pass along here. We have person avatar Antonio, JPEG color green. I think it's going to be the middle one because we have these different kind of constants that we're searching for and we're calling upon them by name. So that's correct. So when we create an instance of a structure, pass arguments for each of its properties. So you'll have the name of the property, so those things in those let statements, and then the value. All right, next question. A property can have a value that changes based on other data. Well, that would be true because we can use a computed property to derive a value from another property. I wonder if it'll, oh, it doesn't even let me select the wrong answer. I'm actually curious if I select the wrong answer, if it'll give me a hint. Anyways, how would you insert the values into a string? So we have my friend / friend name is age years old. Well, we learned from our string interpolation that's going to be that / and brackets. And that is correct. So we use / and then the value within the brackets to insert the value of contents into a string. All right, we've answered all the questions for the tutorials. There's even a little article if you want to go a little bit beyond, but we're able to kind of create this reusable structure and then pass along the information. So if you want to go even further beyond, there's a few challenges that you can do. Even have some computer properties to return different colors. So if the temperature is really high, maybe that color changes to red for the text. It's totally up to you. The next article here is to design an interface. I can probably create a tutorial on that one as well. These are really great and interactive ones for learning SwiftUI. So if you're a beginner, definitely follow these tutorials. If you want to learn a little bit more about the syntax, you can check out my channel for the fundamentals. If you are looking for specific features in SwiftUI, I have a playlist for different features in SwiftUI to build your app. But these tutorials are a great starting place. Real quick, I want to talk about a couple useful commands in Xcode. Command Option P is going to reload the preview instantly. Jump to definition. So if you want to learn more about something, Command click. So let's say we wanted to learn a little bit more about how text works. So Command click, we can select text. And this is actually going to load the documentation, which will tell us a little bit more about the text. We also have quick help. So if we do Option and hover, you'll see that our cursor changes to a question mark. We can learn a little bit more about the text. And if you want to run your app on a simulated phone, Command R, or press the play button up here, and this will kind of give you an instance of an iPhone or iPad where you can test how that would work on the simulator. So there you have it, a beginner's walkthrough of Apple's Develop in Swift tutorials. Today we covered the Hello SwiftUI and customizing views with properties. I hope it gave you a solid foundation in building SwiftUI apps. Don't forget to check out the rest of the tutorials for more hands-on learning. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and share your favorite SwiftUI moment in the comments. Remember, dream big, code bigger, and you can check out my channel for more useful Swift tutorials and learnings. Take care, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed.